Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders help it grow. Katie, good to see you. Lance, good to see you. You look relaxed, and tanned in your first week of your new position. I guess you've learned more about PPP in the last 2 days than the last 6 months.
I've gotten immersed, Bob, and having a lot of fun.
Good. Hey, just a review. These are the certificates. Download those and keep track of what you're attending. Let's see. We're changing up our show a little bit per Joseph, so I think it's a good idea. We're going to ask the poll question, then we'll talk about it, and then we'll move on. So the first one is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund will exhaust funds by this Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Lance, 53% say true, 20% false. Lance, you have an idea?
I agree. I think Friday may be it.
You are wrong. Katie, what's the answer?
Yeah, so the SBA administrator yesterday published something saying that eligible eating establishments have until Monday, May 24th
I know it's a trick question,
to submit applications. To date, I think I do have a slide here. They have received more than 303,000 applications, representing over $69 billion in requested funds. 38,000 of those applications have been approved for more than $6 billion. Of the overall submitted applications, 57% came from women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged business owners, which was the primary intent for this. I know early on they were only accepting those, so that was very good that they got more than half of those were from that group right there.
So that's so we're looking at that date. Is that a firm date, Katie? Is that what she says?
Yeah, so that's the date that she is giving, as I'm assuming if there's leftover money, they'll probably just end up pushing that to something else. I'm not totally sure what the plan there is, because it does, looking at my calculations, I would think there's a little bit more money left there, but maybe not. So that is officially the date and the time when it's supposed to end, though.
Katie, refresh my memory. How large is this program?
I don't have the stats in front of me right now. It is a fairly large program, but we did expect it to go pretty fast. There were a lot of restaurants in line for this.
Lance, I'm
so
sorry.
yeah, it did go fast, but yeah.
Lance, do you know how large the program is?
I'm not sure, Bob. I completely agree with Katie. My communications with small business owners in the restaurant industry, they were all queued up and ready to go. And of course, we talked about this for quite some time before it opened up. So people were ready. They'll use, I got to believe, Katie, they'll use all the money.
Oh, yeah.
I think they'll probably use all the money. There might be, I don't know, that giving a firm date does make it both easier in one sense, because you know when the applicants need to be in, but at the same time, I'm not sure if it's going to be totally empty at that time, but we'll see.
Lance, I know this is an SBA program, not a lender program, but are they able to access the portal over the weekend? I assume they are.
I don't know, but I would assume so, Bob.
Yeah, but that would be there. Okay, very good. So if you have a borrower who wants it, tell them they better get moving. And remember, thanks to our friends out in Texas, they said you got to have that DUNS number in place already, and you need to have the SAM clearance. So probably you're getting a little bit too late in the game to try to put that all together.
Yeah, if you don't have your SAM's clearance and your DUNS number, you're behind the 8 ball. You've got to.
How are we doing on Cheddar Venue, Katie? If we heard anything about that, but I'm not seeing any announcements. I haven't seen any stats.
Yeah, there's not really any new news on that. It's still up and running as far as I'm aware. But like we were kind of talking about in previous shows, it was a little more limited than we originally expected. There were a lot of limitations to things like Certain venues had to have their chairs actually bolted down and things like that. So I think maybe it wasn't as good of a program for as many people as we expected, but hopefully it is targeting those people who really didn't need it.
What
Bob,
about you, Lance? Go ahead, Lance.
It reminds me of the old days in 504. 504 over the years has kind of broadened what you can use 504 funds for. But 504 program, if it was not permanent, a permanent part of the building. So, I'd have small business owners, well, if I bolt this down, can we count it as 504? Okay. So you'd have people out bolting things down in their business buildings so they could get 504 funding for it.
Yeah, be careful.
You look at a restaurant, Bob, like the flat top grills. If they were connected to the building, like bolted into the floor, those used to count. So anyway, that's what it reminds me of.
Well, very good. Well, hopefully this is, we're going to be following this very carefully. We're putting together the underwriting webinar for next Wednesday. And Lance, it looks nowhere near what it looked like when we did this last. We didn't do it last year, but we did it 2019. And we had to throw it all out, start from scratch, because it's almost a completely different business model now.
But Bob, a lot of the trends that we talked about in 2019 have gotten accelerated.
We were there. We were there. Absolutely. Let's talk about CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions. Do you have a CDFI that you work with that you can refer your borrower to? Split, 41% yes, 46% no. Lance, I think a good SBA citizen should have this in their toolbox and know who can take care of your borrowers if you can't.
Absolutely. The CDFIs should be reaching out to other PPP lenders who are now shut out of the program, and because a lot of PPP lenders are issuing letters to their people who had applications in that had not gotten an SBA number yet, and saying, because of SBA's guidance, we're not going to be able to do it. It'd be nice if you could add on, but community financial institutions can do this, and here's a couple you can contact.
Katie, give me a basic CDFI definition. I know that they have a lot of different things they do, a lot of different products. Do you have a basic definition of what they do? Is there something?
I don't have a basic definition. Primarily, they're going to be focused, though, on minority groups, underbanked areas, things like that. Really, it's mostly those underbanked, and that's the concern. And part of the reason why the House had a hearing yesterday was they were trying to see how CDFIs and MDIs really help the community and things like that. At that hearing, they were looking at things like how they actually performed above program average in terms of PPP loans to businesses that were less than $150,000. They also had significantly more loans to minorities and things like that. They do serve about 70% of the minorities in the country that do not have a bank branch in their neighborhood. So those are some things that they were looking at yesterday's hearing. And that hearing really wasn't necessarily to change anything, but the witnesses were giving some advice saying that Congress needs to work with government agencies like SBA, CDFI Fund, and Treasury Department to create more of a framework to help these CDFI lenders mitigate risk, build balance sheets, and access sources of capital to make them a more effective way of helping small businesses, especially minorities and businesses that are in underbanked areas.
Underbanked, yeah. What's an MDI?
Minority Depository Institution.
Okay, thank you. Are those banks? Are those?
They're really more similar to a CDFI. They can be associated with a bank, but they're more like a CDFI.
Okay. Yeah, I think underbanked and go into geographic areas and footprints where there's no small business. You just have boarded up walls. I think that's a good thing for Main Street. Talk to us about PPP funds. How much is left over?
Yeah, so that's going to be about $5 billion left in the PPP funds, and those are set aside for CDFIs, MDIs, and the SBA has said other very specific banks are maybe going to be allowed, but they're probably going to be focusing almost entirely those funds on CDFIs and MDIs. Something to note, I did throw in the chat a link so that you can find local CDFIs and MDIs. There's a locator map if you need to find one that's close by to direct your borrowers if they do still need a PPP loan. However, it is important to note that those applicants will need to be part of the CDFI or MDI's targeted market. Otherwise, those groups could lose their funding. So it is important that they are part of that market.
If you need a good referral, Lance, pick up the phone, send an email to your local district, SBA district office. They certainly know these people in the SBDCs. So I think that's a good resource to be aware of. Let's talk about Section 1112 payments. Section 1112 payment funding is still available for 7A loans coming off deferments. True, false, or we'll flip a coin? Lance, we got 57% yes and 14% no. What's your opinion, Lance?
Well, it's a tough question, Bob, and I don't know the exact answer. I know the 1112 payments have ended for a large majority of the existing SBA borrowers. They still exist for newly originated SBA loans between now and September the 30th. There's still 1112 payments for the special NAICS codes, including hospitality, for another couple months. I do not know if a loan coming off deferment is eligible for 1112 payments. My general inclination is no.
Yeah, I know there's funding issues and that, but we'll be following up on that.
Yeah, the 1112 payment funding, there was a pretty robust amount, and they came out with the guidelines, and then as we all know, they backed up and said, no, we're not going to do. Initially it was going to be more payments than what they ended up receiving. So my general inclination, because of the funding level, is no.
Tim wants to know, is there a mechanism to increase a second draw PPP loan if increase is made by the participating CFI?
So the second draw loan was done at a CFI?
Let's assume the second draw loan was done by a bank and the CDFI says, hey, we could get a little bit more money. Is there a way to do that?
Bob, I'm not aware of a way to do that because increase would be increasing in an existing loan, which would be at a bank that right now has no available funding.
Right. I agree. Can the CDFI can't make another loan on top of the bank loan, PPP loan?
No.
Yeah. So I think we're out of luck on that one, Tim. Russell says, has anyone had any PPP loans still under review that were submitted prior to the program being closed for new apps? I'm sure the answer to that one is yes, Lance.
It's a resounding yes. Institutions across the country have loans still in review status. And my understanding is some of those may end up getting funded. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, and we'll do that. Lance, give a little preview of what you're going to be talking about on your webinar at the top of the hour.
Well, we're going to talk about servicing the unforgiven portion of your PPP loans. Been working a lot of PPP forgiveness recently, and of course, not all PPP loans will be forgiven. There will be leftover balances, and we're just going to talk about how we service those PPP loans. There are some things about servicing those remaining PPP balances that we don't have the answers to yet, but we're going to give you the best information that we have. The other thing is we're going to touch base with some servicing actions that can be used, because I had a conversation with somebody who's been in the SBA industry as long as you and I have, Bob, and we were talking about borrowers coming off the 11, 12 payments, and we both fully expect that some of those borrowers are going to struggle, potentially default, but we're going to need to know servicing actions and things we can do to help them get back on track.
It's all that now. Let's understand what we have now. You not wait till something hits 90 days and then we go, hey, what's going on? I mean, this is definitely proactive servicing, correct, Lance?
Absolutely, Bob. Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Let's see. We're still waiting for a number of things. Let's tick them off. Number one, Katie, you promised us a month ago now the hotel 504 refinance. I haven't heard anything. Lance is throwing his hands up. But we're.
I expect now that PPP is kind of winding down, I would hope the SBA would get on this, because it is a very good program. In theory, it's a great idea, but we need the details in order to do this. So I would hope in the coming, I would hope soon, but I don't really have any.
None of us do, and I'm.
Well, Bob, this is a thought that I have. 504, the pace of 504 lending this year has been very, very strong, well ahead of last year. There's been some discussions with potentially not having enough funding to get to the end of the fiscal year. Well, if you open up the 504 refinance, I can promise you we won't get to the end of the year, because that's going to be like having a small fire and pouring some gasoline on the fire.
But we don't need gross dollars in the budget. We just need a subsidy amount on a couple of percentage points, so we have an ability to fund a lot more funds than we do with these grant programs. So that's very, very important. Near and dear to your heart, Lance, and we talked about this yesterday, forgiveness. How do we logistically prepare the paperwork to get it off our books when the business is gone or we're not getting paid back and there's unforgiven? And I know you're going to talk about that later today, but we don't know, do we?
Well, the release of how to request purchase demand on a unforgiven PPP loan has not come out from SBA yet. So we're going to have to service these loans. Now, I suspect we'll see it very soon, Bob. And I suspect, like we were talking about, Bob, it'll probably be tiered, much like the forgiveness applications. And those under 150 will probably be pretty simple. 150 to 2 million will be a little harder, and the over 2 millions will probably be a little more challenging. But I can't imagine, Bob, a PDK being that extensive. There's no collateral, no guarantees. It's going to be
But we need to have a format to move on. Yeah.
Get us a format so we can move.
Paul says, hey, gang, most of the CDFIs in my area have stopped taking applications. Paul, we've heard that throughout the country. You're absolutely correct. Russo came to Katie's defense and says, here's his elevator pitch. What is a CDFI? CDFIs are private sector financial institutions that focus primarily on personal lending and business development efforts in poorer local communities requiring revitalization in the United States. CDFIs can receive federal funding through the Treasury. They can also receive funding from private sectors such as individuals, corporations, and religious institutions. So it's very broad. And their mandate is underbanked, underserved markets. Finally, Hunt says, hey, if you know of a CDI we could refer our clients to, please share. The resources at SBA for the information aren't that helpful to him. Again, as Paul was saying, what I would do is I'd pick up the phone. I would talk to someone at SBA, Lance. That would be at this late date. But then I would also,
like you said earlier, Bob, your local district office can probably point you to the CDFI.
Yeah, because they work with these people, and they have a lot of context. Lance, thank you very much. Good to see you. Katie, glad to see you back as well. I think we're all settling down from vacations and job changes and everything else. Thank you all for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.